has legacy.
Welcome back to another episode of Dubai Works Business Podcast. This week we're joined by Nick Walsh, the CEO of VMLY&R Commerce. Y&R.
It's a bit of a mouthful.
It's a mouthful. I said YML earlier. VML. We'll talk about all that. The CEO of VMLY&R Commerce in the Middle East and North Africa. So he's heading a network of offices from the hub here in Dubai. Nick's business management experience spans a variety of clients such as BAT, Unilever, JSK, Coca-Cola, Mars, Guardian, Audi, and BP Castrol, to name a few. So really household names there. He's a pioneer in the activation space, focusing on ensuring his team become an authority in the core offerings of e-commerce and experiential. Nick is passionate about people and inspires them to achieve great things. And if you see their office, you'll see how many awards that they've won. So really credible company and leader in the marketing region here. So just a quick one about what I fumbled earlier. VMLY&R Commerce, they're part of WPP, so the Creative Transformation Company. They're the newest end-to-end creative commerce company, and they're built on the expertise of geometry scaled through VMLY&R's connected brand promise. And Nick will talk a lot more about that as well. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks a lot. You got through that pretty well in the end.
Yeah.
Well done.
You must have to do it every day. So how do you describe the company and the role?
It's again, VMLY&R Commerce. It is a bit of a mouthful. But ultimately, we're again part of WPP, so Creative Transformation Company. WPP has kind of 4 key pillars into the future. So technology, commerce, experience, and technology. VMLY&R Group very much plays across that, but our commerce division, of which I'm in charge of, we really focus on those 2 pillars of commerce and experience. So it's exciting time to be part of this kind of commerce evolution. I'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
But it's good because we're an agency that are focused and really clear on what we do, and that allows us to be specialists and attract the right talent, make sure we have the right skill sets across the agency. So it's a good moment.
Okay, so exactly. A lot of buzz terms, and we will have a lot of marketing buzz terms and acronyms as well, but it's a real business story as well. We'll talk about the pandemic and everything. Yeah. But just in terms of history, so I had to get Wikipedia so back in the past, VML, which is the surnames, and people will recognize the names of these agencies of how they're come up with: Valentine, McCormick, and Ligi Bell in 1992 in Kansas, and then Y&R Young and Rubicon, which is very famous, from 1923, and often cited in the Mad Men era. And both of those were eventually acquired in 2000 and then 2001 into WPP.
So some of this will be news to me. Even I think some of this is before my time. But I think just to build on it. So I've been part of WPP for 15 years. So I started my career in Ogilvy, which again is one of the key creative drive brands of WPP. I started out in London, moved to Dubai, to the region about 12 years. So I've been in the region for 12 years. The Ogilvy brand is a very big one, as you know, here, and really successful agency here. And we started an agency called Ogilvy Action back then. So that was around 2008, so pre the pandemic. That agency was the first real, what I would call shopper marketing or brand activation agency in the region. Certainly the one that was multinational with offices around the world. And the last, that was just before the crash, 2008, the previous crash. And the business actually really grew through that because we were, I think, here in the region for the first time, really focusing on shopper marketing, driving conversion, driving purchase. And I think that was quite new from the more mass media approach that brands had taken during the time. So as we evolved, Ogilvy Action grew, became a very successful agency. We then became Geometry. So you'll still see the Geometry name that we hold today. So Geometry, as shopper marketing evolved, I'll talk a little bit more about how shopper retail and commerce as a segment of the marketing mix has evolved. And I think we've evolved as an agency with it. So we became Geometry in 2015, and that was So this will link back to your question in terms of mergers. So at the time we were 3 agencies. So Grey Ogilvy and JWT had shopper or activation agencies, of which Ogilvy Action was one.
They're all the creative agencies, big brands, part of WPP.
Yes, and each of them had a shopper or retail, or what some people might still refer to, even though we get it today, it's below the line. So BTL.
Okay.
If you go back to, depending on when you studied marketing, you'd refer to it as BTL.
Yeah.
So their BTL agencies were merged together to form Geometry. So Geometry became, and I think this is where you and I worked closer together back in the days, but Geometry became the kind of the unifier of all things retail, shopper, experiential, trade marketing for all of WPP. So we would plug in and work with the lead creative agencies, we'd plug in and work with the Mindshares and the media agencies, we'd work with PR agencies as well, and almost became a kind of amplifier in that part of the marketing mix. Really successful time. Geometry brand over the last 6 years has grown. You've been to the offices. Really proud of what we have achieved in that time. We've built the brand from scratch in across the region. Real specialist people, as I mentioned. So I think the difference is again from a strategy. So from a conceptual, strategic side of things, they're always thinking about conversion. How do we get people to buy products? Likewise with our creative teams, they're not necessarily thinking about the next big brand film or the next big advertising campaign. They're thinking more about solution-based creative, and that's where some of our best work's been done, right the way through to execution, and whether that execution is in a physical store or on a commerce site or just outside, and it might be down at the beach, wherever it might be, but wherever conversion is, and again we'll come on to that later. And then midway through pandemic last year, we took the VMLY&R brand on, as you mentioned there, and again it's the evolution. So VMLY&R, one of the real power brands within WPP. Commerce is a big part of what they do, so it was a natural move to put the VMLY&R commerce business, which I look after, within the group.
And Nick, is that blurring the lines again with below the line and being at the creative concept part, or how much of it is related to sort of what you alluded to at the start in terms of the 4 key things for WPP and the alignment that's happened within the group?
Yeah, I think it's quite rare these days for brands to want just one part of the mix. They do want the complete offering, and so of course it blurs the lines. We get certain brands that come to us with a particular sales or it might be an awareness, or it might be in a trial challenge. So it's always at that end of the funnel, and we can develop campaigns and solutions that work for them. Otherwise, we'll work together with the other WPP agencies. Integration is really important, so we work with the branding agencies, the media agencies, the PR agencies to give total solutions, and that's becoming more and more common. So, but it works both ways. Whichever's right for the challenge, we can work.
Yeah, and this was so compared with the other mergers that WPP did last year. Is this the final one, or is this?
Not sure to be honest, but it's.
But you know where it sits for you.
Yeah,
guys,
exactly. Yeah. We're really clear. So there was the Grey and AKQA merger last year. There's been, and again, I think what WPP does very well. It's the largest in the world of its type. Is it moves ahead, and these mergers are made for good reasons, and in the changing landscape of marketing, and media, which as you know is changing by the second. So it's important.
So brilliant, amazing. I don't want to skip past this section without asking you about what London advertising was as a young guy, because it's a very hard and it's also very exciting. Like, how was the start for you? What did you study marketing, and what was it like getting that job?
Yeah, it's a great question. I look back at this a lot, and I'll link it to today. So yeah, I studied marketing. I always had a passion for that part of the business, and I particularly liked the creative side of the agency world, which is what drew me to it. And I liked the complete total thinking, as I say, from strategy through to seeing something you've done, and also like the diversity. So the fact that you could one day be working on a FMCG product, or a sports product, or a media title, it was or cars. That was exciting for me. So I studied marketing, focused on advertising communications, and I think it's a really good point, because I think to get a job in a big named advertising agency in London or in any developed market is really tough, really quite difficult. And so I did internships, I worked hard, and I think it made me really appreciate how difficult it is. And so when I came to Dubai, which was a big move, again, as similar experiences you and I think that opportunity to get international experience was a big one. Working for Ogilvy here, for me, I kept the same principles. People shouldn't want to work in a business because it's working for a multinational. They should love the industry, respect how much these brands have done over the years, and it should be a real achievement to get in. So I'm really proud of the career, and for me, staying with the same group for a long period of time is I think is quite rare. So it's been good for me. The training's been good, the experience has been good. But I think for young people trying to get into advertising, you need to learn to love it. You should be looking at the shows, looking at the work, looking at what brands. You really need to become. It's not just about the university studies. You've got to really have a passion for what we do.
And is it the same now? Where in the 2020s, do you think what it was like in London at that time when you started? Do you see young people having the same passion for marketing when they're starting out?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll go back and forth from today to 10, 15 years ago. I think the challenge now is that maybe let's call it the advertising industry, marketing and media industry. There's so many more options now, so people might get the same from working for one of the big social companies, for example. A lot of them are building their own in-house agencies. A lot of brands are building their own in-house agencies too. So I think it's more competitive. We've always been a talent business. It's always been about the people, because ultimately, yes, our product is a marketing solution, a piece of creativity which does something different for our clients. But our product is dependent on the people and the talent we have. And I think what I'll always very much fly the flag for the Middle East as a place. I think we've had a tough reputation over the years for the quality of agencies. When we, with what we do as a specialism, we have 56 offices around the world, and Dubai is one of the top 10 best offices, both in quality and standards and the work we do. And I very much fly the flag for us as the only truly international global hub. So quite often we're having to do global pitches for brands where they want to provide a solution across the whole world that's consistent. For me, there's no better place than Dubai to do it, because with 33 nationalities under one roof, we've kind of got every corner of the world covered. So truly we're international. And even if you think about international hubs like New York or London or Singapore, the base of talent is still from that market. Yes, you've got a mix, but here it's truly an international hub. And I think that's a really important. When we talk about diversity at the moment, it's never a problem we have with diversity, because we're completely diverse, and we'll always strive for that. So we're strong in terms of making sure we don't hire all the same nationality, making sure it's a beautiful mix, because that's ultimately where great work comes from.
It's great to hear, and it's great to hear, I think, for people who might think that some of these international brand names just have an address, but to have pioneering work coming out of here. And speaking of that, pioneers, there was the sad recent passing of Eddie Mitran, who was one of the industry leaders here, and particularly part of the Ogilvy story. You would have worked very closely with him, and what you spoke about, the legacy that he's created for the work that's possible now. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, of course. Look, it was an incredibly sad moment for me personally, for the agency, the MENA group of which Eddie founded, and the industry as a whole. I mean, I think you saw the impact. The guy was a giant of the industry, incredibly great mentor. So many people who were in a transient place like the Middle East, so much great talent came through thanks to him. He always made sure that talent passed on to the next generation. He helped to grow people. He helped to guide people. He's an incredibly good guide for me, and he's really missed. But people like that, they founded the industry here, and the knowledge they had, and the way in which the client relationships they had, and the understanding of the region, second to none. And I think he taught me an awful lot, and again gave me the opportunities to become one of the younger CEOs in the group. He trusted me, but it's again really important. As an Englishman in the Middle East, you have to understand nuances and understand the region, understand the business, but you have to embrace the talent that's here. And that's something that Eddie very much taught me. And we'll miss him. He was one of a kind.
Yeah, and inspiration, and as you said, recognized globally. His reputation is high up in WPP globally as a creative leader.
Very much so, yeah. As a shareholder, as a founder, and I think he was always striving for what's next, and I think that's another big merit, and it's a important thing for all of us. We have to keep, as you do, we have to keep moving forward. And he would always, he opened up Ogilvy Action, he opened up Ogilvy PR, he obviously ran the Group M and Mindshare businesses, as you know. In research, he was pushing the digital agenda, he was pushing the social agenda. It was always about what's next in the industry, and I think it was, there's a lot to be learned. But yeah, a giant, really, let's say so, a giant in the industry.
Well, thanks for sharing that, and it's good to kind of see, the living, breathing of what he created, of how it lives on as well. So it's amazing to see. But speaking and touching on some of those points in terms of knowing what's next and some of the trends, and kind of maybe ending up with where you are now, with really leading edge commerce. What are some of the trends that you've navigated over the years, and how do agencies assess those in terms of client offerings?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'll talk a little bit about, as I say, about again, I'm 15 years experience in what was below the line, and back in those days we very much talked about non-traditional media, or media which wasn't necessarily on the rate card of TV or out of home and radio and such like that. So, a lot of sampling, a lot of trial, and to be honest, our industry has evolved significantly. So, and actually the best way to look at it is, even you buy things, you buy watches, you buy drinks, you buy bikes, you buy shoes, you buy a mobile phone. Right? And purchase has changed incredibly. So if you look back in those days, it was very much about, maybe you saw an ad on TV or something, and you went to the shop and you purchased it, right? That was purchase in those days, and we used to talk back in those days about purchase decision journeys. Very linear. Okay. I'm triggered to buy something, whether that be I need a new car because my one's broken down, or I'm thirsty and I need a drink. That's your trigger. Okay. And then there's steps you took to buy it. But the trigger to purchase in those days was, I need this. Yeah. I go. You might have gone to a dealership and spoken to them about the car. You buy the car. Yeah. And then marketing persuades you to need things that you didn't need. Exactly. And that's and that's impulse purchase. So that's a big part of what we do as well, right? So and actually impulses, I'll come on to it, impulses are really big thing now because of the number of ways the media is so much significant. So obviously BTL changed to shopper, and I think our growth in shopper marketing, particularly in this region, one thing about here versus, let's say, Europe, for example, is the physical shopping experience is fantastic. If you look at the quality of the malls, if you look at the quality of the shops, the cleanliness, the experiences you get, second to none. If you think back to maybe the high street in the UK, where you lived, it's not the same. Yeah? No. So when we first started to push the idea of shopper marketing, that was very much about bringing a sense of much more rigor into how we communicate in store, in physical store. So there we'd be looking at proximity to a store. So that might be within a mall, that might be outside of a store. What's the right messaging to pull you into that store to make your purchase? Okay. Then we'd look at different zoning. So you from proximity, you'd come into transition. So when you go into the store, how do we remind people that it's our product you need to buy, not another. So one of our most famous pieces of work was for Lifebuoy. I don't know if you saw that one. So the handle on hygiene, where we created an innovation which sat on trolley handles. So it was a piece of point of sale, but it sat on the trolley handle cart, and it swiped Lifebuoy disinfectant across the trolley. Really famous piece of work from this region that's gone global, won lots of awards, and still is used today. Obviously, with the pandemic, very relevant. But if you're ready for the pandemic, but a wonderful piece of communication. When you think about it, what it was doing was very disruptive. So it put that brand top of mind in a place where you wouldn't have been able to do that before. You got to experience it. There was a clear benefit for the shopper as they walked in. This is great. There's a benefit for the customer or the retailer in that occasion, because the retailer is able to offer their customer something which would attract them to their store versus the other, and obviously a clear brand benefit because the brand is able to demonstrate exactly what it does at that moment. So that was incredibly effective shopper marketing at that time, because it put that brand at the top of the agenda versus others. And then did you measure that? Obviously, if it won awards, but you would see people sort of at some point then put that product into their basket. Exactly that, yeah. So 300% uplift in sales, top of mind number, but incredible amount. And again, new ways to engage consumers rather than, and I'll come on to point of sale. I keep remembering things I'll come on to, but I'll talk about that. And then we push people through the zones, through to impulse, as I mentioned. So, and you've done it before. You've walked into a store wanting to buy one thing and come out with 10 other things, right? That's smart marketing, and understanding again what's people's need sets. How do we understand? How do we fulfill a moment like that? And then right the way through to what we call destination. So that would be at the point of sale when I'm given 5 brands to choose from. So things like planogramming, things like communication, their pricing, promotions. So that was kind of our mix, and that was shopper marketing. Then obviously what happened is the growth and e-commerce. We're going to talk about e-commerce a lot as we go, but e-commerce is a big topic now. But in truth, e-commerce has been around for some time. So we moved from kind of shopper to what we call omni-channel. So that was then suddenly, rather than watching TV and being inspired by something or speaking to a friend and then going and buying it, you were able to research. So you were able to look at websites. You were obviously interrupted with social channels and the options became a lot more. So obviously what brands were doing there, with the same zoning principles in mind, was looking at how do I interact with consumers and shoppers on an omni-channel level, so both on and offline. And again, the beauty of this region is what we found was people were going into store to try something on, or to see, or to feel it. They were going online and to buy it, or they were going online to research it and going into the store to get that physical experience. So omni-channel kind of was the next stage, if you like. And then I think that which brings us up to today, and I think omnichannel is a well-used term, and it's interesting. People still use the term BTL, people still use the term shopper, promo, omnichannel, but really, again, where we are now as a company, we talk about unified commerce. And so, and to link back to this kind of blurred lines thing, every brand has a commerce requirement, and actually commerce is becoming more and more central to what people want. So when we talk about commerce, it's important to say we're not talking about e-commerce. There are so many aspects to commerce that might be traditional. It might be what we call Q-commerce, so the Insta shops and the fast purchase type things, Q-commerce. E-commerce, as I mentioned, but then e-commerce.
Why is it Q-commerce? I don't know that term.
So it's quicker.
Okay, not QR code.
No. So quick commerce. So it's the fastest way. I mean, even if you look at this region, I think I mentioned this to you before, but
like click to buy.
But even if you look at traditionally this region, and if you look at places like Saudi with the healthcare, pharmacies are a really good example. So we've always been able to make a phone call to the pharmacy, and within 30 minutes, something's been at the door, or to Starbucks, or to your local corner shop. Obviously, that's always been there. That's been there for about 10 years. So that quick and need for something, fulfillment, has always been there. Obviously, what we're seeing now with the development of apps and direct-to-consumer models, whether it be food or whether it be golf balls or whatever that might be, that has been elevated even more. But so what we mean about unified commerce is, and I mentioned this, so I'll come back to this point now about point of sale. We used to talk about POS. We used to be known as a POS agency. And everyone thought that meant posters and wobblers. The wobbler agency is something
positioned by the till, so you buy that, add that bars bar into your basket.
Exactly.
Very physical.
Exactly. So the POS, and everyone, it was a bit of a kind of media, if you remember, that everyone kind of turned their nose away at, because it felt like the end of the day, when you've done all your glamorous comms, that you need to ship and shape up a couple of squares for your wobblers.
My first ever job in marketing is in 2006, and we had 6-sheet newspaper boxes outside newsagents with posters, and it was a POS job, POS marketing. But it was so old school, so traditional, out of home, but it's like old days.
But I think that's, so when we talk unified commerce now, the interesting thing is POS, a point of sale, is everywhere. So you and I could sit here now and buy something. There's amazing stats that the amount of purchase that's made before people go to sleep, sitting in bed, buying, searching through, and buying and purchasing there. So
that's now the digital mobile version of the point of sale.
Exactly, it's everywhere. So you could be in a restaurant, scan a QR code, make a purchase. You could be flicking through Instagram, see something, hit that, make a purchase. You could be on WhatsApp. You can purchase through WhatsApp. Point of sale is now everywhere. So
what I find so interesting about this, Nick, and I didn't really understand this in terms of marketing, and I kind of can't believe that I missed it in terms of, we've been educated for the last few years to think of that as lower funnel performance marketing, and we've almost forgotten the creative part of it.
Absolutely.
How do you remind clients that example of in the mall, in the store, how do you remind them that that's possible in a digital virtual world?
And I think that's the role that geometry, VMLY&R commerce play in effect, right? So again, a brand can go to TikTok or a brand can go to Amazon and say, help me sell more of this product, and that's fine, but it's a very singular, narrow view of the mix.
Cost per click, or
exactly, and it will produce results. But again, we've just spoken about us as shoppers or consumers. First of all, as shoppers, we don't shop that way. We don't go to one place and buy stuff. We go everywhere. Yeah, we walk down the street. We talk to friends. We go on different social channels. You have your email alerts that come through. Everything's reminding you. So taking a singular view, and and of course, it's again going back to how traditional media works, right? Traditional media houses want you to work with one media. They don't want you to work with lots. So I think from a geometry of VMLY&R commerce, we're able to take that holistic view and really look at, so going back to path to purchase, where we talked about path to purchase, trigger to purchase. Path to purchase is now trigger, because there is a moment that inspires you to want it. Again, it could be you and I talking about watches, or it could be something you heard on the radio, or it could be something you saw on Instagram. There's a trigger.
I was in the gym this morning, and there was a really good friend of mine, triathlete, and we talked about I have a back injury, and he said, have you used this gun? He has a Theragun, right? And since I've come to the office, he sent me 3 videos on Facebook, and he showed me the app that gives you the workouts with the Theragun. And it's 2,000 dirhams, or it's $400. I'm already sold. Because I know that I can get the demos of the app. But at what point can you help with that? How can you make that experience? Where in terms of like me having the right video to use the Theragun and to help me purchase, where does the creative come there?
So we have kind of 4 key areas to our business. The first one I would title attract. So it's the path to purchase in effect. So from trigger to the moment when you're on the dance floor and you're about to make that purchase. So again, we would look at the research and data we have for you as a consumer. Where do you go? What are your habits? You will now take the back injury inspiration, and you will go and start to look yourself and make up your own mind. So we're able to obviously, with our media partners and with the clients' data that we have, and really start to map out where people are going to be. Then importantly, the type of communication has got to be quite different. So the creative requirement comes in, we used to call it matching luggage, right? So you'd have one visual and you'd shape it to all different sizes of luggage. So that doesn't work, right? You don't need to see the same piece of communication about the back product again and again. You want to see inspirational communication at certain places, and that might be very what we'd call extrinsic or emotive. So how does that make me feel? How will that help me? How will I be better is what you want to hear. As you go into other places and you're nearing purchase, the comms changes much more rational, much more intrinsic communication. So what are the benefits? Where's the best place to buy it?
Specs, prices.
So it's funneling, but it's looking at the types of places you'll be. Again, you're talking about triathlon. We could be talking about golf. We could be talking about a motor enthusiast. We could be talking about sports drinks. There's places people go as they make those decisions. So our job is to map those out. But then, it's vast. So that could be through a social channel. It could be through a website. It could be through traditional media. Still, there's still a big space for that. And then obviously the creative executions we do can be video. They could be static. They could be it could be audio. And then obviously as you go through, we're looking at a very different creative solution. So a big part of when I talk about attract, so path to purchase, a big part of what we do as an agency as well is in the interact, so experience. So we have a big experiential arm because we believe that experiences drive purchase. Until pre the pandemic, physical experience was a big deal. Again, that experience.
You set up that brand activation that people are impressed by when they go to the event or the mall. That's you guys.
It's a part of it's part of the purchase process. So that could be, that could have been an event with thousands and thousands of people. It could be a festival. It could be a very small, one to few, one to many, personalized experience where you're gonna buy a very expensive car. But that experience, that physical experience, especially for the higher, actually not just for, but for the higher end purchase, when you make a significant life purchase, you want that experience. And that's where, certainly in luxury, the challenge has been in e-commerce, because when you go in to buy a Chanel handbag or a Rolex watch or a pair of shoes, you lose a lot by buying it online and it arriving at your door, because the physical experience of it arriving.
Definitely.
You go into the
store. My mum plays around that.
I met your mum. The physical, the going into a boutique, sitting down, having a coffee, talking about the product you're about to purchase is huge. So the experiential part, which is, again, we talk about, is part of the path to purchase, is incredibly important. Obviously, what we've been doing a lot within the business is moving to digital experiences. So we have a product called LDX, Live Digital Experiences, where we brought that, as much as we can, that physical experience into the virtual space. And we've worked a lot with other aggregators, so people get physical deliveries to their home, but at the same time you still have a digital experience. So that's made up for it, and again, that will continue. That's a different subject again. And so that experience plays a really big part in purchase, and that's where the creativity comes in again. That all has to be consistent. So from that trigger and the first information you see, and that very emotive, how does it make me feel? Again, buying a car, through to that experience has to link together in different ways and send different messages, and then through to, as I say, that purchase point. So I talked about attract, interact, act. So the act of actually physically buying, and that purchase might take place in a store still, and it does. And I think we talk about the growth of e-commerce, and it's clear to see it's growing massively and it's big, but the data again doesn't show how much physical purchase is still happening. If you go into your local Carrefour, it's still as busy as ever. If you go into the Dubai Mall or the Galleria Mall in Abu Dhabi, you will still see it's busy. Yeah, they're one of our clients, and I think and so I think there's a huge role to play, especially in this region, with the physical experience still, and it's about tying those things together. And the last part, just to finish off on that, is post purchase. It's post-purchase, and how do we then inspire repurchase? So it's the React side. Yeah, exactly.
So just the language that people might think of in their marketing, but thinking it more holistically and creatively. What have you seen? You talked about experiential events, and I remember working with you years ago, and on JBR there was an Activia experiential thing. But who does that, and the idea behind it? And then in the last 12 months, I've seen and I know you don't really want to single out all your clients and praise them because for favoritism, but I will on your behalf and say the good work. But you've done really good work with Twitter that's won awards in the past, and you've done recent work for their virtual conferences, which isn't necessarily a transaction, but it's still an experience and it stands out. So, but what has the data shown you, Nick, in the last 12 months? Like, we talk about e-commerce, but what's happened really in this region in the pandemic?
So I think, as I said, the stats and the facts are there to see. The rise of e-commerce has been incredible, and again, sometimes it's just easier to talk as a human being and as a shopper, and the way you've changed your own shopping set. And I think pre the pandemic, people were still ordering online. Pre the pandemic, people had a roster of places they purchased from. They might have used one direct to consumer model. Let's talk it into food. Food's easier, right? So you might have used the Kibsons, for example, direct to consumer model, right? Yeah. Once a month. You may have got shopped at Carrefour once a month and done a big shop. True. You may have popped to Spinneys. You may have used a bit of InstaShop when you didn't want to leave, and you may have called your local pharmacy. You would have probably had a roster of places you purchase. And if I put that into specialism like bikes, there's websites you would have bought things off. That's always been there pre the pandemic. Obviously, what's happened in the pandemic is it became a matter of necessity. So particularly during the tough lockdown, we had that moment where people were stuck at home. Do you remember? I think we were allowed to go out for one shop every 3 days or something, and obviously everyone was scared to do that. So it moved because of convenience, and two, because of safety. And so obviously when people went to when people made that move to start to look at what else there was out there and how else could I make that purchase, they are still coming back. So I say, look at the shops, but that roster of ways in which you could, like, the different places you buy different things has become so much greater. And I think that's been the most significant change. So we're seeing, we're seeing huge amounts of startups. So again, there's more and more. Every product almost has a direct consumer model.
So are your clients now those startups? Are they the quick commerce clients? Are you working with them to help that experience?
Yeah, so we work with retailers as well to support them. Predominantly, we work with brand owners, and we're seeing that's the battleground now. So whereas we would have traditionally built an in-store experience in a physical retail store, we're also building in-store experiences on InstaShop or on El Grocer or on Amazon or on Noon. So it's the same principles but applied to the virtual world. Okay. So yeah, there's a hunger for it. It's the buzzword. It's certainly, commerce is the big word, but I think it's so multifaceted, as I'm saying here. It's very difficult for any marketing agency or brand to really own it. But ultimately, we're driving sales. And going back to things like the Twitter work, which we're immensely proud of, and it's a great partner of ours, there's still, if we bring commerce up a level to conversion, ultimately what we're doing with all of our work is a behavior change or a behavior piece of inspiration. So even the work we're doing with Twitter is B2B focused. So there we're trying to drive conversion through a slightly different audience through inspiration. So it's the same principles that apply.
How would you call taking a level around the status quo of advertising landscape? Where would you say we are now? Is the industry trying to prove itself? Is it trying to justify itself in an ROI digital world? Do you think that there's, obviously, where I'm coming from with this is the markup of these holding groups is lower than it was in its heyday. Is that going to continue? Is there a revival? We can speak passionately about our work, but what's the need in this, and how does the wider world see the advertising industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's terminology, right? So the advertising industry, if you called it the advertising industry, I think they'd see it fairly redundant. I think if you termed it that. But as I mentioned at the beginning, when we're talking about communications, the need for communications, whether that be public relations or use of media and smart communicate. I mean, we've seen it. The way in which communications was handled in this country during the pandemic was incredible, right? So communications is always going to be incredibly important. Commerce, as we covered in detail, so I won't go to it much. Experience and technology. That's the industry, right? So advertising, as you would term it, is not right. It's a part of what we do as a group, but and it's a service we do offer, and we do it incredibly well. But I think the big thing is WPP are the largest in what we do. We call ourselves a creative transformation company, and it's that creativity part which sets us apart from maybe other consultants and such. So definitely. We're as much as it's been tough. For all elements of marketing over the last 12 months, but we're seeing certainly in this region things are moving. It's busy, and there's a lot of things coming back to life, and those elements and those skill sets. And I can only talk really for, again, our part of the business, but that need for sales and conversion across industries is bigger than ever. So at the moment,
where do you see the opportunities, especially for this region, in terms of the emerging trends? What are the key trends that you would kind of bet on to emerge post-pandemic?
I think so. Again, going back to that physical experience, I think we are at a moment where we cannot wait to get back. And I know there's no such thing as normal, but I think that desire and hunger for travel and for going back into
football games,
exactly.
Sports.
I think it's inherently in all of us. I think it will take a long time, obviously, for us to get comfortable with that, but it's there, that hunger and desire. So I think it's important that both brands and marketing agency partners, and even yourself, we're able to think ahead of that. So some of the work we're doing is thinking ahead to 2024, 2025. What will physical experiences look like then? I think the beauty of them will be that there'll always be this virtual element. Tech has come on so quickly in experiences, but marrying of the two is going to be incredibly important. So that's a really big bet for us.
That's quite exciting, because I know we talked about it off air before about, you mentioned 24-25, but that's actually a brief that you have. It's a global mandate for a client to look at this. So from a user point of view, if we're going to Qatar, or some people, I know they can't travel to Tokyo, but the expo in Dubai, not only will it be the new normal in terms of our back to an event, there's abundance of creativity about to hit them.
Absolutely.
There's these experiences they're going to be kind of hit with.
Exactly. And I think, brands obviously, have a role to play in that, finding purpose, sustainability. These are kind of key opportunities for brands to ensure that people get those experiences they're craving for as well. So that will be a big part. And as I said, I think, our commerce big bet is very clear to see. And Definitely. I think, understanding that we're never gonna own commerce in totality. We're very good at the parts I've spoken to you about, which is again looking at why people purchase, and how we can amplify that for our clients.
So with experience, you're at that sort of that touching point with the customer more so than other parts of marketing in terms of concepts as well. But can I just ask this question in terms of restricted marketing, but also you mentioned the word brand purpose. There was a hullabaloo on the internet last week in the US about a tech company on, not allowing politics being discussed in the office and things like that. Where do you see, and we see global companies doing purpose-driven marketing, what's your view on it, and where do you see we are in the Middle East in terms of how are brands creating a voice for them in the world that we live in? Okay,
again, I can't. I missed that one in terms of the issue. From
Basecamp, the small company, 60 people. The CEO said you can't talk about politics at the water cooler, and Coinbase actually said this last year before they IPO'd, that we won't come out and say X subject is important or not. So they don't actually, when CEOs call out privacy, or they call out something, or Nike lead with an issue. I want to say Nike, but for example, purpose-driven marketing and taking on cause-related issues.
No, I think so. It's becoming a part of every brief we tackle, and really? I think if you think. If you look back at a lot of the work that was won at the recent Dubai Links, obviously the big awards for this region, an awful lot of the work is purpose driven. Yeah. Really? So you can sense and see that the work that brands are doing, there is a common theme in terms of it's helping, or it's supporting, or there's a particular group of people or an issue that it's tackling the work, and you can see that right the way all through the work. It's becoming harder and harder for brands to ignore it. And if you think about certain topics, again, let's pick up on sustainability, for example.
Okay.
Massive on every multinational business's agenda, and obviously a lot of the stuff that they're doing is very much behind the scenes. So it's stuff that's being done for sustainability reports and investment. You don't necessarily see it. What we're able to do from a marketing perspective is put some of that in the eyes of people. Now, where the challenge comes is that if certain traditional brands, and again, I'll be careful as I talk around this, it's very difficult for a food manufacturer with lots of sugar to talk about healthy eating. It's very difficult for a media company to talk about
what about a tobacco company?
Exactly. I mean, if you look at what's going on in restricted markets, like in restricted business like tobacco, I mean, it's no sign that they're moving away from tobacco into new generation products and away from tobacco. So there's a big move there happening. And again, if you look at sugary drinks, it's a move to non-sugary drinks. So the big multinationals are doing that right the way through. Anything which was maybe seen as haram or or not a positive sign for a company to be making money, they're addressing that and very much softening that. So we're seeing a lot more. I think the challenge is it's not something necessarily which is tackled at our part of the marketing mix. It's tackled at a much higher level, but we have to play a part as well. And I think the most important thing is that if it's done with a brand, it's done with good intentions, and that it doesn't feel false or forced, because I think that's the worst way it can be.
Fascinating. So Nick, we're almost out of time, but I always finish on what your view is of the Middle East as an emerging market.
Yeah.
Will that market emerge in your view?
Of course. I say I fly the flag, and I'm vastly proud of having worked in London, having worked in that industry, and so it was wonderful, and I enjoyed every second of it, and the speed and the pace. But truly, working here and leading an agency here, I really believe in the potential of this region and the work we're doing, cutting edge. You'll see a lot of the agencies are winning global awards. We've won a lot of global awards, as you mentioned at the beginning. What's happening across the markets. We're seeing big experiential based briefs coming our way. We're seeing commerce briefs. We're seeing governmental opportunities coming. It's fast paced. It's frantic. It's exciting. But as I say, ultimately, it's that opportunity to build this multinational talent base. And if we can do that with the opportunities that are here, there's no reason this. In what we do, it can't be number one. Amazing. And you touched on it earlier about the diversity. We talk about diversity, but diversity in creativity and solutions for brands is incredible because of it needs to be, communications. But Saudi Arabia, I know you were there a lot before the pandemic, and you'll be going back again. How crucial is that market in terms of the emergence of the region? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a given, of course, isn't it? The question. I think the ambitions, obviously, you can't fail to be excited by the ambitions of Dubai. You can't fail. I mean, it's inspiring. I think every company that is here has to kind of live by those ambitions as well, and have the same mentality of wanting to be number one and wanting to strive to be better and wanting to keep improving. As we mentioned with Eddie at the start, right? It's a very similar vein. I think everyone should adopt that same mentality. But then with what's happening in Saudi, again, it's another layer even above. The ambitions are even bigger, and obviously we're starting to see a lot of those opportunities materialize with what's happening with the Giga projects. And we're also working, again, we run brands across the region, so MENA or MISA, even into South Asia. And our brands are wanting to do more in Saudi, and I think Saudi will evolve, and even again in the commerce space, watch it go as quick. It's gonna move even faster, and we're going to see even more innovation. We're going to see even more startups, and it's an incredibly exciting time. Amazing. So you optimistic, and you see more global awards out of. Big time, of course. VMLY&R. Always ambitious, always ambitious. Amazing. No, absolutely. Well, great to chat as always, Nick. Thanks so much for your time today, and we could talk forever, but really good. Thanks a lot, Rich. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, and we'll have you back again when we're at events, hopefully. Great stuff. Thanks, Nick. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Thank you. Bye. Please do check out more Dubai Works episodes and other shows over on smashy.tv. You can follow us on social media and download our app, which is available on iOS, Android, and all good smart TVs. See you next week. You can follow us on social media and download our app, which is available on iOS, Android, and all good smart TVs. See you next week.